What the? If you excuse me.
What's going on? Why does it feel like months have gone by? Where am I? Well, it's obviously my room, but where's all my stuff and... Oh no. Spirit, please, no! It's not my fault that Digimon Survive has not come out, and that Kanaka did his old Digimon 2021. Please, Spirit, please give me mercy! How about an urban mech? An urban mech from the Kickstarter? No? Look, please, Spirit, it's been too long. I haven't been in the review game for a while. Please, let me do something first before I do Digimon, please. The Last Stand? As in the Flash game? It's on Steam? Huh? I guess we're reviewing The Last Stand. Kind of a weird segue into Digimon, but Digimon is data and Flash is data, and we just came from the Henry Stickmin collection. I guess it counts! So, where to begin with The Last Stand? Well, I guess some historical context.
So, we all know what zombies are. John Romero had that Night of the Living Dead series, Call of Duty keeps making zombie mode, and Nerf sells blasters that are designed for a game that more or less is banned on many college campuses.
Suffice to say, zombies are kind of a big pop culture thing these days.
But it wasn't always like this. For many horror fans, zombies tended to be kind of a low-level threat, shambling hordes that were easy to kill, nowhere near as scary as, say, vampires, werewolves, and flesh golems. It wasn't until Max Brooks released the Zombie Survival Guide did the perceptions of the horror really enter the public mind, as zombies could ruin society. Yeah, Dracula could suck the blood of people, but Dracula is just one person. Zombies are a horde, and they keep coming. Sure, werewolves require several bullets to kill, but at least you need just one bullet. Zombies, regular ammunition might kill them, but do you have enough for the horde?
Basically, zombies went from a small curiosity that represents the zeitgeist of the many against the few to an enemy that could bring down mankind with their own numbers. In essence, they became the perfect villain for man's technological edge. They also became the perfect enemy for people to live out their survivalist fantasies.
But I hear you ask, what exactly does this have to do with a Flash game? Well, simple viewer, it was this interest in zombies that led to an explosion of media pertaining to surviving the zombie apocalypse. Now, I want to preface that the Zombie Survival Guide did not give birth to games about surviving the zombie apocalypse. Games like Resident Evil already existed. But what I am saying is that this book helped popularize the idea into mass media, that without this book, we might not have seen the explosion of zombie merch that we now have.
But I'm getting sidetracked. This is a review of a game, not the discussion of zombies in pop culture, so let's move along.
In 2021, Con Artist Games released a collection of their Last Stand series. Kind of a good idea since Flash has been discontinued. Now, I have quite the history with this series. I remember playing 1 and 2 back in the day and waiting for Union City to come out. I loved the games, but question now is whether they still hold up. Is it worth buying this collection for what amounts to 3 Flash games?
I guess the best way to start this review is to look at 2007's The Last Stand.
So, what's the story? Why are we trying to survive? Well, the game is kind of vague on this. You play as Jack, a survivalist who's trying to hold out for as long as he can against the horde before the military comes, and after 20 days, you're saved.
That's basically the story. Not much to say, it's simple and gets the job done. It's no Resident Evil, but it works. For what the game is, I think that's more than enough.
So, the story is kind of lacking, but thankfully the gameplay makes up for it. The game is split between 2 modes, nighttime defense and daytime preparation. During the nighttime, you fend off the horde, trying to make sure they don't destroy your barricade, and if they do destroy your barricade, well, hope you can kill them before they kill you. Daytime is a little more nuanced. You have 12 hours to do things in preparation for the next wave, and you need to use your time wisely. Spend too much time repairing the wall, and you soon learn that your pistol is insignificant to hold back the horde. Finding new friends is a good idea as they can help you repair the wall, but you're limited to only 7 survivors, and that's not enough to hold back the horde. Getting weapons is an excellent idea, but that AK-47 you find won't do you much good if the wall you're defending is about to break, all because you don't have enough survivors to repair the wall. This is the meat and bones of The Last Stand. Use your time wisely, and the hordes will be little more than a speed bump. Use it unwisely, and you will become lunch. It's this management of time that turns this little game from a bog standard shooter to a game of wits. This fear of wondering if you spent enough time shoring up your defenses, finding survivors, losing survivors, and getting more weapons all creates an atmosphere that few games have mastered.
That's not to say the game is without problems.
My first issue is combat, or more accurately, how damage is dealt to zombies. Now, tell me, where's the best place to hit a zombie? Why the head, of course. So naturally, you'll want to go for headshots, correct? Well, in The Last Stand, shooting a zombie in the head doesn't instantly kill the creature. In fact, I'm not even sure it does extra damage. I want to think I'm doing more damage by shooting the zombies in the head, but I'm not sure. It certainly feels like I'm doing extra damage when I shoot the heads, especially compared to shooting the legs of a zombie, but I'm not certain. It doesn't help that when you shoot a zombie, the bullet will hit the zombie that is right in front of you. Now, Walter, I hear you say, isn't that how bullets work, you say, trying to teach me how ballistics work? Yes, I answer. That is how bullets work. Now answer me this. When you have this horde, which zombie am I going to hit? Answer, not the one I'm aiming at. Because of how damage is dealt in this game, it's very possible that your shots are going to be spread out amongst 3 zombies, which means what should have killed 1 zombie with potential headshots instead hits 3 zombies in the gut. It's not too much of a problem, but can be annoying when the horde is at the wall and all you can do is blindly fire back at the horde. Thankfully, you have your trusty survivors. Surely they'll fight back against the horde, right?
Nope.
For whatever reason, the survivors helping you rarely fire their weapons. Look, the zombies are right at the gates and these guys are just standing right there. And when they do fire, it's rare they hit anything. I don't understand why these guys just sit here and do nothing. Yes, I'm more than capable to hold back the horde, but a little help would be nice, especially when I have to deal with a large number of fat zombies right at the wall. Another little problem I have is the weapon selection, or more specifically, the chainsaw. Once you have this weapon, you're pretty much going to need this equipped at all times, if only because it's so powerful that it trumps the other weapons, with the exception of the anti-material rifle. The reason I say this is a problem is because you only have 2 slots to equip weapons, which should mean you have options to experiment with weapon loadouts. But once you unlock the chainsaw, this experimentation goes away, and you're left using a ranged weapon and a chainsaw, simply because the chainsaw is that good at dealing with zombies that reach the wall. It's simply overpowered. Finally, the content.
The Last Stand lacks much in the way of content. Once you reach 20 days, that's it. The game ends. No endless horde mode, no endless night campaign, nothing. Now, to be fair, this was the case back when the game came out, so it's understandable, but still, this game is short, and it needs something to keep you coming back.
That being said, it's a fun game. It's a good bedrock to build off of. Yes, it has its problems, but they're not that critical to the gameplay experience. It's a well thought out and good concept for a game.
A concept that would be refined in The Last Stand 2. Let's begin.
Ah yes, 2008's The Last Stand 2. Like any good sequel, our story begins right after The Last Stand 1. As it turns out, one of your survivors was infected, bringing the helicopter down. Somehow surviving, you make your way to a store and hold out till morning. You soon learn that there's an evacuation from the mainland out of Union City. Problem? You're not in Union City. To compound your problems, you have 40 days to reach Union City before the government firebombs the city to Kingdom Come. Good luck! Much like before, the story is simple yet clear. You don't have time to sit around. It's Union City or bust, and you have quite a ways to go. I like that this adds urgency to your actions while also making you think of just what you want to prioritize. A good mix of story and gameplay working together. Speaking of gameplay, some elements have been changed. Much like before, the game is split between nighttime defending and daytime planning. Nighttime is holding back the zombies from the wall, while daytime is spending 12 hours planning for the next horde. What's changed, you asked? Well, simply put, everything, and mostly for the better. For starters, daytime planning is less spending hours searching and now carefully selecting what buildings to search. Each building requires a set amount of hours to search, and trust me, you'll want to search as many buildings as you can. In addition to weapons and survivors, you can also find supplies that will help you move from city to city. That's not to say weapons and survivors are less important, because now their value has gone up. For starters, the survivors actually fight back. They actually fire their weapons and kill zombies if given the chance. What's more, you can now equip weapons to your survivors, increasing the amount of bullets flying towards the horde. Yes, the maximum number of survivors has gone down to 4 from the previous game's 7, but at least those 4 survivors actually fight back. And if you're worried the horde will be too much, you now have traps that can help stem the tide. From bear traps that can hold zombies in place, mines that blow their legs off, to propane tanks that explode when shot at. And if that wasn't enough, you now have new weapons to fight back against the zombies, ranging from the bow and arrow grenades to an RPG-7. Except for the fact that the chainsaw has been nerfed, and you know what? I'm okay with that. I still need the chainsaw, but at the very least I'm not too reliant on it. That's not to say the zombies aren't packing some new tricks. Tell me, what's scarier than a fat zombie running towards you? Why, a fat zombie running towards you with a knife that they'll use to kill one of your survivors. That's right, zombies can now kill your hardworking survivors right in front of you.
A neat way to prevent you from just spraying bullets down range. Too bad it doesn't really stop that tactic from being any less effective.
So yeah, might as well get into the problems with this game. For starters, still no idea if hitting certain locations causes more damage. Like before, I think there's some damage variability, but I'm not certain. I'm also not a big fan of the traps. They can kinda be useful at times, but honestly they tended to be too little to really stem the tide of battle. And let me tell you, the game gives you these traps like candy at Halloween. That's nice and all, but I would much rather have more survivors. For whatever reason, the game is more stringent with how many survivors it will give you. I tended to find some in the first two areas, but once I reached my third town, I rarely found any, and given survivors can die in battle, that's sort of a problem.
I mean, I get it. Try and keep your survivors safe by killing those weapon zombies first, but that can be kind of impossible when a fat zombie just tanks my attacks and just rushes to kill a survivor. I'm also not a big fan of the time limit. Don't get me wrong, I like that I have this time limit and how I need to really consider what I can and can't do. I just feel that 40 days is a bit lenient. Unless you try and collect everything or you have bad time management, you'll make it to Union City no problem.
One element I did not touch on with the first game was the music, mostly because the first game lacked much in the way of music. I mean, there were some ambient tracks here and there, but you mostly ignored it. The sequel is much the same, some ambient music that you tend to ignore. There are different tracks for the different cities, but not much else. And then comes in the content, which is lacking. Like before, there's no endless mode or endless campaign. There is some replayability by taking separate paths, but otherwise the campaign is all you really have.
Overall, The Last Stand 2 is an improvement over the first. I like how the gameplay and story play off of each other, forcing you to prioritize how you act in game. I like how you have to decide which buildings to search, what weapons your survivors use, and what towns you walk to. My only real complaint is the lack of extra content, but hey, at the very least the game concept has been fleshed out, refined, and improved. So let's see how Union City improves, and it's an RPG that takes little inspiration from what came before. What?
So, if The Last Stand and Last Stand 2 are like Sonic Adventures 1 and 2, then Union City is like Shadow the Hedgehog. It doesn't really build on what came before, and you question some of the design choices that were used in the final product.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's actually look at the game before I start going too critical on it.
So, 2011's The Last Stand Union City. I remember waiting for this game, playing the test releases Con Artist Games posted on their website. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and hey, it has RPG elements like Fallout 3. I like Fallout 3, but then I played it and never really went back. I don't know, I guess times changed, but unlike 1 or 2, I never played much of Union City. It wasn't until I got this collection I started playing again.
And honestly, I was not looking forward to it.
But I have stalled enough as is. The story is kind of a departure from the last two games. This time you play as a custom character who's coming home from work when you hit a zombie. Acting quickly, you worry about your wife, or husband if you're playing as a female protagonist, and try to see if they're okay. After you fight your way to your apartment, you learn that your significant other has escaped to the hospital due to a bite wound.
Oh, that can't be good.
You go to the hospital and learn your spouse has been evacuated to the stadium. At the stadium, you learn your princess is in another castle, because apparently the organization Herc is interested in your spouse and has moved them to another location. With some help from a janitor, you soon break into this new location and rescue your significant other. On the run, you make your way to Union City Island in the hopes to find a boat. Unfortunately, the docks are walled off by a concrete wall. Fortunately for you, however, Jack and his band of survivors, the actual protagonists of this series, are here to help. All they ask is you get them some explosives to breach the wall. Explosives you can get from an army base. Thanks to the help of your new friends, you and your spouse are able to reach a boat and escape from Union City. Except your boat breaks down and your partner starts to moan like a zombie. Oh, the hubris.
Yeah, the story is kind of bland.
I frankly did not care at all for the story. I had no interest in the plot, motivation, anything. In fact, most of the time I forgot I even had any stakes in the plot. The only characters I really cared about was Jack, his survivors, and the janitor. That was it.
The problem with this story is I had no real connection to the protagonist's plight. This story needed a prologue that shows the relationship between you and your spouse. Maybe a tutorial where you and your spouse fight their way to a safe house, only for your partner to be picked up by the government, leaving you behind. Give context to my actions. As is, there really isn't one other than let's kill some zombies.
I'm also not too happy with how linear this story is. For an RPG, I was kind of expecting some options, like maybe give me the option to use the janitor to sneak into the Herc compound, or allow me to just fight my way in, or perhaps opt to search locations out of order, something to make this RPG feel more like an RPG and less like a run-and-gun shooter.
Which kind of segues into the gameplay. It feels confused.
So, right from the get-go, Union City plays nothing like its predecessors. Instead of holding the line against hordes of zombies, you're instead exploring Union City, racking up XP, and walking through areas. Now, from the outset, this doesn't seem too bad. In fact, this seems like it would be amazing for a zombie survival simulator. And you are right, it would. The problem is, that is not what Union City is. What Union City is a side-scrolling shooter with some RPG elements and basic exploration. And let me tell you, it's not a pretty picture. To begin, let's look at the RPG system. In Union City, as you kill zombies and search, you gain XP. With enough XP, you level up and gain points that you can spend on skills. Skills that, frankly, aren't all that useful, or at the very least so limited in scope you kind of wonder what's the point. In my playthrough, I emphasized security, smarts, and searching, mainly because I wanted to lockpick doors to gain loot, get more XP, and have a chance to find random items while searching. Let me tell you, I was 2 out of 3 when it came to those skills, mainly because there are so few locks to pick that it was frankly not really worth having security. In fact, most of these skills are not worth it outside of search and smarts. Because when you have high luck, you get a high chance to find skill books, high smarts, and you get more points from those books, a high search, and you can find those books quite frequently. Okay, so I cheesed the game. What does that mean for the RPG system? Well, I can tell you it's kind of pointless. Investing points in other stats barely did anything to change my character. I never felt I got stronger or better as I leveled up. Then again, I did find a fire axe, which is the strongest weapon, fairly early on, so perhaps that made up for my terrible level in combat, right?
Not really. I even went ahead and played a second game, this time on survival mode with different stats. It didn't really play all that different.
Which is off because you would think increasing your skills would change the game over time. Early on, I noticed I would constantly miss zombies when I shot at them, but would almost without fail hit zombies with melee weapons. Now, to be fair, I did increase my melee stats, so perhaps I was hitting the zombies because my stats were high. Except, in a new game start, I noticed that except for maybe 1 or 2 swings, I was consistently hitting zombies and dealing damage. The point I'm trying to make is that the RPG system doesn't seem to really add anything. The same can be said for exploration, or perhaps the lack of. Remember how I said the story was too linear? Well, that complaint also applies to the map. Outside of the reserve, which is so confusing that you need a map just to go anywhere to the point I ignored this area, you move through each location one after the other, going from left to right, entering buildings to loot, and occasionally backtracking. There's really not much to explore. Sure, you can loot buildings, but outside of ammunition and weapons, loot you can find on some zombies, I never really felt the satisfaction exploring buildings. Sure, doing the few side quests around was interesting, but even then they usually amounted to find a small item and bring it back.
There wasn't even much of a reason to do these quests, as the rewards were, kinda mediocre most of the time. Outside of getting some followers, it really wasn't worth it to get more supplies or weapons.
The same can be said about looting. Most of the items you find are junk items. Now, you would think that maybe you can use these items to craft new weapons, or perhaps sell these items for some quick cash, right? Well, no. Outside of one mission, there's no crafting whatsoever, and the merchants, all 2 of them, only accept cash. So yeah, no reason to loot or carry these items.
Basically, this is a zombie survival game with an RPG system that doesn't really do much, a map that is too linear for exploration, and a loot system where most of the loot is kind of worthless. You can kind of see why this game has an identity crisis. It plays more like a side-scrolling shooter than any RPG. And yeah, that was the difficulty mode I played for my playthrough, but considering even survival mode, which added restrictions like sleep and hunger, didn't play all that different, yeah, I think there's something wrong with the concept in itself.
This is where having that bedrock the first 2 games provided is important. Why not have it where the player sets up a safe house, slowly gathering a gang of survivors and slowly increasing each member's skills individually? Maybe have it where you set up teams to explore Union City, maintain the base, or hunt down zombies. Make it where you have to think how you will survive, kind of how it was in the first 2 games. And the free-to-play game. Huh.
Another issue I had was any real lack of tension. Outside of small zombie hordes appearing, I never felt like I was in trouble. Death wasn't even much of an issue. You die and you lose some experience. That's it.
And then there were the glitches. Of the 3 games, Union City had the most. The big one that I encountered was when zombies grabbed me. Because if a zombie grabbed me, it had a good chance of causing my character to freeze in place. I had to save my game and reload like 5 times in a row over the course of 5 minutes. After that little debacle, I was worried every time a zombie grabbed me, because I did not want to reload my save. Now, to be fair, I never encountered this glitch afterwards, but the fact that this glitch did happen, and happened so consistently in such a short time, had me worried and placed a thought in my head. Every time a zombie grabbed me, I became worried my game would soft lock. Doesn't help my brother also recognized this glitch when I described it. This one glitch caused me to lose confidence in Union City's ability to play. In comparison, the only glitch I encountered in the previous games was in The Last Stand 2, and that occurred only one time after I died. Kinda makes me wonder what other glitches are present in Union City.
Overall, Union City was not that interesting. Oh, I like what the idea that the game represents, this survival RPG in a zombie apocalypse, but the execution just... No, this needed more work. I give a lot of slack to Flash games. They are labors of love, but Union City may have needed more love.
So what about the collection as a whole? Is the Last Stand Legacy Collection worth buying? Well, that depends.
When I first heard about this collection, I was excited. You're telling me that for $10 I not only get The Last Stand 1 and 2, but also Union City? I would have been okay with just The Last Stands 1 and 2, with Union City being a separate purchase. But actually going back and playing this collection, my tune has changed. I can understand not remastering the game. That takes time and effort away from future projects. I also recognize that these games are still being cared for, as Con Artist Games has patched these games to include the content from ArmorGames.com, but maybe some more content was needed to be added. An endless mode or endless campaign mode for The Last Stands 1 and 2, a concept art scrapbook, a jukebox, something. Then there's the fact that Union City is kind of a mess. Like I said, I give a lot of leeway when it comes to Flash games, especially this series. I like that the art style was maintained and not removed in some weird remaster fashion. I like the stock sound effects and how they bring me back to a simpler time. What I don't like learning is that the game with the most content is the weakest of the bunch. I get that you can't change the core game, that ship has already sailed, but at least patch Union City. Give me the confidence to play that game. As is, the collection feels lacking. It desperately needs something, and a lack of content, in addition to Union City, affects my recommendation.
Look, if you grew up with this series, I recommend buying this collection. The Last Stand 1 and 2 are well thought out and good examples of what this developer can create. I want to see where Con Artist Games goes in the future. I look forward to see what new projects they'll create. But if you never grew up with these Flash games, well, I hate to say it, you might want to wait for a price drop. $10 is kind of a lot for this collection. I still recommend buying this game, if only for The Last Stand 1 and 2. Those two games are worth playing and experiencing. Union City, not so much.
And there you have it. Kind of a weird way to get back into the swing of things, connecting zombies with Digimon, but I guess I need to restart somewhere. And now I have to review Digimon. I'm Walter Norton, and this has been a Botluck Productions review.